So in your book, Walk On, you talk about the story of how you came to meet Coach Carroll and what eventually then led to you working for him. It's a really unique, inspiring story. Why don't you tell us about your Walk On story?
Yeah, so I was a student at USC, University of Southern California, out in Los Angeles, and just a normal student, just trying to find my way through college. And I changed my major 4 times and just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my life. A lot of college students struggle with that. It's like, man, I don't know what I want to be when I graduate college. I don't know what I want to be next week, So it's really hard to like plan out your life when you're 18, 19 years old. And so I changed my major a bunch. I couldn't figure it out. And then it hit me one day that I loved watching SportsCenter and I love sports. And so I was like, well, what's the closest way I can get to sports since I wasn't good enough to play sports? So how could I get as close to sports as possible? And I was like, I should try to be a journalist, like a sports writer. And maybe I could get a career in sports journalism. You see the guys on ESPN and all that. I'm like, maybe I could be one of those guys someday. So I enrolled in the journalism program, and that became my major. And part of the major was that you had to write for the school newspaper, the Daily Trojan. And I go and sign up, and I was like, I knew I needed to be in sports. So I signed up for the sports section, and they assigned me to cover women's volleyball. And I had never watched a women's volleyball match in my life. So I'm like, holy cow, like, how am I supposed to cover a sport I don't know anything about? Yeah. So I'm doing a crash course on like volleyball and Wikipedia page on how does volleyball scoring work, like all of that. Mm-hmm. And I was a fish out of water. Here I am trying to be like the expert on volleyball, writing stories about them, but I knew nothing. So a couple weeks into this assignment, I get a call from the sports editor. And I was like, oh boy, I'm going to get fired here. Like I did such a poor job. And he's like, hey, I've been reading your stuff. You've been doing a really good job. Actually, I'd like to promote you to cover the football team. Would you be interested? And before he could even finish asking the question, I was like, yes, I'm in. Count me in. Like, let's go. I want to do a sport I actually know about and I'm a fan of. And so for the next 3 years, my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I got to cover the football team at USC, and this was the glory years of USC. So it was the mid 2000s, and it was Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Heisman trophies, and they won 34 straight games during those years there. Wow. That was my job in college, was to cover the team. So I got to go to every home and away game. I went to 2 Heisman Trophy ceremonies, 3 national championship football games as my job. Like I was getting paid. It was pennies, but I was getting paid as a college student to go do this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was living a dream. This was my dream job, and I hadn't even graduated college yet. So I was loving it. It was an amazing experience, and I was about to graduate. I was geared up to graduate spring of my senior year, and I needed to write my last article for the football team. And in the springtime, there's not many football things going on. You have spring practice, but other than that, like that's only a couple weeks. So I needed to find something unique and a unique angle, and I was going to do a story on walk-ons, the end of the bench guys, the non-scholarship players. And there's 85 scholarship players on a Division I football team, and there's about 15 walk-ons. And those walk-ons, they never get articles written about them. So I was like, okay, this will be a cool, unique angle. I'll shine some light on these guys that don't get any attention. So I start interviewing those guys, and then it hits me that I saw this ad saying there's walk-on tryouts coming up. So I was like, I'll take it a step further and interview the guys that are going to go try out for the football team. Just the average students at USC, they're going to try to make the football team. In that process, it hits me again. I was like, well, I'll take it another step further and I'll go through the tryout myself. And it'll be a first-person perspective, bring people on the inside, show how hard this tryout is. And it'll be a joke too, because I'm the sports writer. I'm the student newspaper reporter. It's the number 1 team in the country. I'm 160 pounds, and I haven't played football since 5th grade. It's been 11 years since I played football. Mm-hmm. So this is a total joke. I can make fun of myself, show how hard it is, and it'll be something unique and different, and we'll see how it goes. And so I go through the tryout. I have the time of my life. I'm trying out for the number 1 team in the country as a joke. Like I had no pressure in the world. This is so fun. Here we go. And I got Pete Carroll yelling at me. I got Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin. They're yelling at me. They're assistant coaches on that team. Ken Norton Jr., linebacker, who I grew up like idolizing. He's an assistant coach. I mean, this is just crazy. Here I am, like running a 40-yard dash for the first time in my life. I'm running a post route as a wide receiver for the first time in my life. Mm-hmm. It was an amazing story. You know, like I was gathering all this incredible content for a story. And I go home that night, start writing my story. And the next morning I get a phone call from a random lady who was like, "Hey, is this Ben Malcomson?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "You made the football team. Congratulations." No, I was like, "No way. There's no possible way." You know, like this is a joke. I was like, "Is this a prank call?" She's like, No. This is legit. You're on the team." And in that moment, my life took a total turn. You know, like all of a sudden, like, what the heck? This is crazy. So there I was all of a sudden, and there's a lot more to go in the story, but there I was all of a sudden, student newspaper reporter turned into a wide receiver on the number one team in the country.
Yeah. You talked about how, in the book, you talked about how you ran from your dorm to, your bike to get down to campus, stormed into Coach Carroll's office the whole time, convinced that it was a prank, right? That he was, totally. that this was some incredible prank that he was pulling on you, because you already somewhat knew him, right? Just working as a journalist.
Yeah. I interviewed him a bunch.
Yeah, exactly. So you thought, oh, he's just pulling a joke on me.
I mean, who better to pull a joke on than the 20-year-old student newspaper reporter, like I was going to be the classic, like YouTube prank. He'll be making fun of me. And like, you thought you were going to make the team. That's really good. Nice one. And then, I mean, I was a classic butt end of a prank, and I walk up and there's Coach Carroll with a big old grin on his face. And I was like, "Nice joke, Coach. Good one." And he's like, No. You can catch the ball. You can run fast. We want you on the team. Are you in?" I was like, "Wait, what? Like, you're saying I can catch the ball and run fast? Like, you want me on a football team?" And he's like, "Yeah, are you in?" I was like, "Heck yeah, let's go." So there, all of a sudden, I get handed a playbook and get my helmet, my pads. And I mean, I didn't know how to read a playbook, like the playbook in 5th grade is way different than a Division I college football team's playbook. Mm-hmm. So it was, I was a fish out of water for sure.
Yeah. It's, I mean, that's a wild story of just trying to walk on to the number one team in the country. But on top of that, halfway doing it as a joke, as you said, like, okay, this will be funny, but not just as a joke, but to try to write a story on it and then accidentally making it onto the team. So it's a wild story, but what are some lessons that you pulled away from that you learned? Maybe some things that you take away from that you've applied to your life since then about that crazy experience?
Yeah, well, I think just the number one thing that comes to my mind is grit. That's something that Coach Carroll teaches and preaches and exemplifies, is just grit. And it's like passion and perseverance and resilience, and having a passion for something, having a heart and a fire for something, having perseverance, like when you face challenges to just endure, and then resilience, like you're going to face setbacks in life. That season I dislocated my shoulder. I had to get shoulder surgery, had to go through grueling rehab just to get back to the football field. And to be resilient, to overcome those challenges and to bounce back. I learned so much, and that shaped me as a person and shaped my character, to go through hard things. And it stretched me a lot and grew me a lot during that time. So I think that's the number one thing. But then there's the whole spiritual side of the story that hopefully we're going to get into eventually. But that's the part that has resonated with me the most, is the purpose side, that God had purpose for me. And I couldn't see it in the moment, but God had a purpose for me. And that's something that I take with me to this day, because I'm sure you can relate, Aaron. Like, there's times when it's like, I know God has a purpose for me, but I just don't see it right now. Like, I'm working hard. I'm sowing the seed, but I'm not seeing any fruit. And it's just that trust to know that God is at work and that he does have a purpose, whether I can see it or not in the moment.